let's continue the tradition of discussing the Harry Potter series with another Patreon request, this time on The Goblet of Fire, released in 2005. At this point, I was insanely hooked on the series, and after The Prisoner of Azkaban, this took the same dark approach, but made things even spookier. This one had instances of near-death killing curses and the return of Voldemort. This was the first one rated PG-13, which at the time meant I needed to get parents' permission to see it on a school field trip. I remember thinking, maybe this one will be too much to handle, but if I could handle the basilisk down in the Chamber of Secrets, I can certainly handle Cedric Diggory getting murdered on screen. Goblet of Fire was substantially longer than the previous books, and at the time it was being considered for a 2-part movie adaptation. You see, movie cynics, even before Deathly Hallows began the trend of splitting the story into multiple money-making films, the Harry Potter producers were planning to do so for story reasons, allegedly. The plan didn't go forward, and gone was Alfonso Cuarón, and gone was regular haircuts. Seriously, I don't know if you remember, but back in 2005, I felt like every boy was in the hockey hair phase, even me. Goblet of Fire was directed by Mike Newell. Due to Chris Columbus directing the first two, David Yates directing every other Harry Potter since The Order of the Phoenix, and Alfonso Cuarón really setting the tone for the rest of the series, I always felt that Mike Newell is the odd man out. He's an English director who isn't too well known in the US, besides Donnie Brasco, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and at the time his most recent effort was Mona Lisa Smile. But even with those fairly popular works, there's nothing that immediately recognizes his style. In a lot of ways, Goblet of Fire is the most important Harry Potter adaptation, with the return of Voldemort, the first major fatality, and the setup for the rest of the series. It's like the end of innocence for all the characters, while their coming-of-age journey continues to the next phase. Mike Newell managed to make one of the most popular Harry Potter films. Fans often consider this to be one of, if not the best of the franchise. I certainly agree that a lot of the changes from the book were necessary, and for such a long addition to the saga, I'm surprised they kept it around 2.5 hours. This time we don't begin with the Dursleys, as they're not part of this movie at all, and honestly I don't even remember that part of the book, but instead we see Voldemort, Wormtail, and some new creepy guy played by David Tennant. At the time, this was such a chilling way to open a Harry Potter film. That snake slithering out of the graveyard, the haunting version of the main theme, and straight up murder with the introduction of the Killing Curse. John Williams didn't return to score this time around, but we get Patrick Doyle, who's done some lesser known work in bigger Hollywood productions. He takes a lot of the great themes and makes something new out of them. I kinda love when a different composer comes in for an ongoing series. It can help bring new twists to the classic, memorable motifs. I guess the opening scene is meant to be a dream of Harry's, and immediately we have the main cast heading off to the Quidditch World Cup, which we see absolutely nothing of. As a kid, I didn't really care that the entire Quidditch scene was cut out, because I didn't really care about the sequences in the previous installments. But as an adult, it's frustrating. We would finally get a chance to see what the professionals can do on a broom, instead of the previous matches featuring high schoolers. They cut it out for runtime reasons, but still. In the book, it at least answered an interesting factoid about Quidditch. Catching the golden snitch ends the game and awards the team 150 points. But if it ends the game regardless, what happens if the other team has so many points that getting 150 points wouldn't be enough to top them? Well, that's exactly what happens between Bulgaria and Ireland. Victor Crumb catches the snitch, but even with the extra 150 points, his team is still shy 10 points of winning. But since the game is now over, Ireland wins. I guess this is a bunch of extra silliness that a normal filmgoer wouldn't be interested in, but this must have been removed from the first draft because there's not even any existing deleted scenes of the event. I suppose it's understandable. They already need to take the time to explain another game-like event in the Triwizard Cup. 3 dangerous tasks that 3 students from 3 schools compete in. But because the goblet has some kind of artificial intelligence that can't be argued against, Harry's name somehow gets drawn from the cup as well, and he becomes the 4th student. It also makes no sense because he's 14 when the finalists have to be 17. This begins the mystery of the story, which is when Harry Potter is best. What's great about the fourth entry is not only is there an interesting mystery, but there's a lot of great set pieces that actually have a purpose within the story. It's not like the Sorcerer's Stone, where the chess game and the flying key is made for intriguing but very silly scenes. Here, they have to fight a dragon, mermaids, and a demented hedge maze, but they're all incorporated into the Triwizard challenges themselves. They're meant to be overblown and preposterous for entertainment purposes. Yet, it's pretty crazy that Hogwarts is now willing to throw kids into dangerous tasks. Don't you remember when Hagrid got kicked out of school for allegedly owning a pet spider that maybe killed one girl? I guess Hogwarts got more hardcore. I appreciate that this one has a lot of room to breathe with the characters. Throughout the installments, the exposition dialogue became less and less, only to get out of control again in Deathly Hallows Part 1, but we'll get to that. Here, there's a lot of comedy and moments where the characters are just chilling, and it feels like a high school flick, on the verge of John Hughes' style of writing. Sure, the argument between Ron and Harry goes on for way too long and feels forced, which is why a long-form book is probably better for this kind of conflict, but otherwise, I really enjoy the interactions people have here. The delivery can get very hammy at times, but I almost admire how memorable it all becomes. I think this is one of the movies I obscurely quote the most. I know everyone's brought up Dumbledore's moment where he nearly attacks Harry about putting his name in the Goblet of Fire, whereas the book had Dumbledore deliver this in a calm manner. But let's be real, this made for such an iconic scene, and it fits the tone of the rest of the film. Michael Gambon hasn't become the best version of Dumbledore quite yet, but it's an improvement over the last film. There's so many great new characters that have such awesome clothing designs and recognizable personas. For so many introductions, I'm surprised everybody can individually stand out. Victor Crumb, his father, Barty Crouch, and oh, don't forget Mad-Eye Moody, by far my favorite Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Such a crazy design, and is exactly what I pictured when I heard the character's name. David Tennant, as Barty Crouch Jr., is so underrated as well. He doesn't get nearly the screen time he deserves, but every moment he's just eating the scenery in all the right ways. I kind of wish he would have stuck around a little longer in the franchise. The thing everyone was waiting for was Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort. We've heard so much about him, and we've seen other iterations of the villain. But to finally see him in the flesh and portrayed by the Oscar winner, it was worth the wait. Everything happened so quickly. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie, and I've always loved it because it just shows how quickly things can fall apart and evil can swoop in. The finale happens within a 10-minute span, and Voldemort not only returns, but he kills Cedric Diggory, attacks Harry, and brings back the spirits of Harry's parents. It's a lot to take in, but it doesn't feel rushed, it feels purposely frantic, and Fiennes is so good in the role. I also have to mention Robert Patterson, who's very lovable as the slightly older Cedric. He doesn't get too much to work with, but it's crazy that after this, he would get cast in Twilight, which led to way too much online mocking. I think he always was a great actor, and if anything, I point to this as proof of that, even for such a small role. I really enjoy when Harry fights the Hungarian Horntail. It's a lot of great flying scenes, seamlessly mixing the different types of special effects, and the music matches the moment so well. It's definitely up there as one of my favorites in the franchise. It can feel a bit jumbled at times, and not every transition moves too smoothly, but it's flooded with good moments, great scenes, and exceptional timing. Oh, and that set design is on point, with some of the most extravagant and unique places we see in this universe. This takes a lot of what was done well previously and wraps it all up together into the ideal Harry Potter adaptation. I know a lot of people had complaints that it cut out way too much, but at this point, with the length of the books, it was nearly impossible to bring everything from the source material into the film. Unlike the future entries, I think a lot of the changes here made sense. But I really hope in the future they create the 1994 Quidditch World Cup, the full sequence, just for fun, maybe as a special feature, maybe as a fan film. I don't know. Someone should do it because we need to showcase how Bulgaria somehow blew a Golden Snitch lead. Special thanks to Lukas for this Patreon request. Thanks for watching the video, and special shout out to Anthony, Anna, Kirsten, Lukas, Ryan, and Robert for the support on Patreon. By joining my Patreon, you can get exclusive videos and blogs, and for only $7, you can request your own movie review. I hope you stick around, cinephile, and have a happy, productive day.